All right. Do you want to start with the top four supplements?
Yeah, we could say
Yeah.
for sure. We could do that.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. What are yours? Top four, Mount Rushmore supplements
The
of all
Mount
time.
Rushmore. So this is the Mount Rushmore segment,
Yep.
essentially, right? Where we're gonna rank things, right? And give
Yes.
our top four Rushmore of various genres of whatever,
Things.
right?
Yeah.
Things, people, places. Um, so we're gonna do first one we're gonna do is supplements, but I told you that I can't put G code products on my Rushmore because it feels shillish and disingenuous and like I lack integrity.
Yeah. But I could do it. Vice would be in there. I'm just gonna
Okay,
caveat
all
that
right,
right off the
cool,
bat.
cool, cool. All right, so all right, so we're gonna do each of our four. Or am I gonna do one? You're gonna do one. I'm gonna do one. You're gonna do one. How do you want to do
Yeah,
it?
we could each do one. And like that,
Okay.
we could discuss the product.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to my earliest roots then, and I'm gonna give one of the earliest supplements that I ever tried, which was I was in high school and literally had no idea what it was, but I had read about it in the bodybuilding magazines that I first picked up. And I was just getting interested in training, like in terms of going to a gym and actually like lifting weights and like with bodybuilding purposes in mind. It was the original pre-workout Ultimate Orange.
Okay.
You
That
know
was
about
me.
Ultimate Orange?
I know about Ultimate Orange. It's kind of like legendary, but it was a couple years before my time, so I never
Right,
got to
right.
try
Because
the original one.
right, so like I feel like NO Explode gets a lot of the props for being like the first pre-workout, but that's not really true. Right? Ultimate Orange was like the original pre-workout. And it was like it was invented by Dan Duchaine.
Yep.
He was like one of the original gurus in the industry and like way out there with a lot of crazy theories and like really pushed the envelope. Passed away young, maybe related to pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
But it was the original pre-workout, right? And it was essentially like a blend of herbs, of some like simple carbohydrates, of a little bit of whey protein, and then it had creatine and ephedrine.
Yep.
And the ephedrine, obviously, probably some caffeine too, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I know there were various versions of it, but didn't taste great. Kind of like an orange creamsicle sort of taste, plus like herbs and whatnot. But it was magical. And you're 15 years old or however old I was, and you don't even know what the hell this is. But you see it in the magazines. They're touting it in the magazines about like what a difference it makes in your training. Ignorance is bliss. So somehow I managed to get it from GNC. Whether I talked my mom into buying it for me or whether I got it myself somehow. But it was the first ever pre-workout. It was my first pre-workout. It was one of the first supplements I ever used, and it was awesome. And like, I'm the type who like goes back to my roots and thinks about my earliest influences a lot. And like, there's probably a direct correlation being drawn between G Code existing and having tried Ultimate Orange that first day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember a couple years ago, High Tech tried to bring it back.
Yeah, dude. I saw that and I was like, man, like, I think it's probably more just about like positioning and awareness and whatnot. And like, High Tech has like a sort of a complicated past, but they also like have purchased all these legacy brands and like they have the potential to remake all of these products that have this nostalgic impact.
Yeah.
But then it's probably just a matter of like devoting the time and resources to getting the word out there to people who would give a shit. You know what I mean? But when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that's amazing. Like, how cool is that to bring Ultimate Orange back,
Yeah, I tried it. It was a decent pre-workout, but I don't think it had anything on the original. And then there is some type of ephedra in it.
Right.
But I think it's like a leaf extract from maybe part of the plant that they get that from that doesn't really do all that much. It's just for the label.
Right. So like a legal one you could get away with, and then you're getting it on the label, but it's not the same thing exactly. Yeah,
right.
For sure. And I mean, I get that. And if that's like it's exactly the approach I would take, right? Like if I was blessed with the opportunity to try to bring something like Ultimate Orange back, you're trying to do justice to what it originally was.
Yeah.
But within the confines and context of what's legal and available, 30 years later, and it's not, not necessarily possible. So I get it. It's a tough thing to live up to,
Yeah. My first one, I'm not ranking these in order. These are just the top.
Okay.
Muscle Tech, Cell Tech,
Oh
the
yeah,
OG
man.
one, back
Okay.
when I was in high school, and
Yep.
it was one of the first supplements I ever took. And you just start lifting, you're going through puberty, and it's basically like being on a cycle at
Yeah.
that point, the hormones
Yep.
and stuff, but you also take Cell Tech with it, and you just blow up. And it wasn't from the Cell Tech necessarily. It was just because you were training and eating a lot and
Sure.
growing as a human.
Yep.
But I just remember that the taste was awesome, and I saw results, and it was just it holds a special place in my heart.
It had that alpha lipoic acid buzz, right? That burn,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It had that little burn, and it's funny because we launched a product a couple years back. That's one of my favorite products that I use on a regular basis called Juice,
yep,
and it's more modern, but Celtec was in the back of my mind to some extent because it does have carbohydrates, it does have creatine, and it does have alpha lipoic acid. And it's because I held Celtec in a certain regard. But one of the things I always think back on with that product, right, is like simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? In so
yep.
many ways.
Hmm.
Because I mean, let's be honest, man, that was not an expensive product to make, right? They were big jugs, so there was, not to get like too far out into the weeds with this, right? But logistically speaking, the big heavy jugs, so like there's shipping and stuff involved in all that. But talk about the raw ingredients inside, it was like essentially dextrose and creatine and a little bit of alpha lipoic acid, a pinch of this and that, but
Yeah.
ultimately it was creatine and simple carbs. That's not an expensive product to make, but man, like those are effective ingredients working
Yeah.
together, right? And that pretty much any serious training athlete would benefit from, most especially somebody like sort of in that sweet spot you talk about where you're kind of experiencing the newbie gains and your hormones are raging, right? And you're
Right.
eating everything that Ma Dukes cooks, right?
Yep.
And then you throw, I don't know how many grams, 70 grams of simple carbs plus creatine on top of it. And it's like, that'll do it. That'll do the job, And I said, like, think about like the early ads with Greg Kovacs in them, right? And it's like Muscle Tech, man, like that empire was built on Cell Tech, and it's a very simple product, but they, made got to be hundreds of millions of dollars on the strength of it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and as a side note, that when I worked at Muscle and Fitness a couple years prior to when I started there, they were spending $1 million an issue in advertising in one magazine in Muscle and Fitness.
I remember, man, because I was like, I read every magazine, most especially Flex. I was a Flex guy, but I read every magazine cover to cover pretty much for 20 years, whatever, right? Was in the magazine era. I read every magazine cover to cover and was blown away, bro, by the amount of pages of advertorials, right? Which is advertisement editorials, right? Yep. That were in the magazines. The amount of pages that they were buying per month in all of these magazines all at once is like astounding.
And it was the only place to advertise back then.
Yeah.
There was no, the internet wasn't available yet. There's no social media. And to hit a niche such as bodybuilding and hardcore fitness, you had to go in one of these magazines or like Muscular Development or Ironman.
Right. And it was a Canadian thing. And I never really knew the details, but I felt like they had like a really intimate relationship with Muscle Mag too. Because Muscle Mag for years was like 30 pages deep with Muscle Tech, and I always thought to myself, like, does Muscle Mag own a piece of this, or is something going on behind the scenes? Is it just that they're Canadian? Is it the fact that you can get maybe a page in Muscle Mag for a fraction of what Muscle and Fitness page might have cost or whatever? Like, but I used to think to myself, man, like, you buy Muscle Mag and it's just one big Muscle Tech ad, and Muscular Development at one point felt the same, right? And then you felt like the Weider labels, Flex and Muscle and Fitness, were more premium, right? So like those pages were more expensive, and still they had 30 pages in each of them. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
And looking back, absolutely. I mean, going back through those magazines was like walking through a GNC. That's how you knew what was available.
Yep, it's true. It's true. That's how you knew, man. That's how you knew, and that's where you had access to information in general, right? Whether it was new products, whether it was training concepts, whether it was dietary approaches, whether it was all those things. That was your access, and even like, I always talk about like Internet 1.0 and the message boards and all that stuff. Like I was into all that stuff, and the magazines were still like so critical to your education back then, even when you had that initial, internet access prior to like social media.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
What's your number two?
All right, number two, I'm still going to take it way back. Number two for me is another one of those legacy products that I thought was awesome, and that still inspires me to this day as well, just in terms of product development, is Metrics.
Yep.
The meal replacement packs back then were awesome. And it was one of those products where it seemed like this science fiction type concept, right? Like it was engineered nutrition, right? And it was mixing certain, ratios of protein to carbohydrates, vitamins and minerals. And it was all in a single packet. And the thought that like, you would utilize it post-workout or in replacement of a meal, and that it was superior. Like, I mean, this was like what the thinking was, right? It was superior to food. Right? It wasn't food adjacent. It wasn't, it's slightly, it's if you can't get a meal in, then you can't get chicken and rice and broccoli, and then you have one of these and you're okay. No, it wasn't that. It was, this is better than food. Right. They perfected food, bro, right? And the thing too, right, it was that it wasn't cheap, man. I'm thinking about, I was like in high school, I was in college, during its heyday, and then the product that came out that was reminiscent of it, that was obviously inspired by it, that was its competition, but that was great also, was Myoplex by EAS.
Yep.
And like these products were available, but they weren't cheap, man. And you're in high school and you're in college, right? And you're like, all right, well, let's see how many of these I can possibly, drink in a week. Can I get one in post-workout or whatever? And, you go in the magazines, you're reading like your favorite bodybuilder is taking 8 packs a day. Like, that's not even possible. Like, how is that even plausible? You know what I mean? And the other thing that was cool about Metrics is that they were like one of the first brands that started to like blur the line and bring worlds together between like bodybuilding, which was still fringe, and like more mainstream athletics, where it started to be like NFL players using Metrics, and NBA players, baseball players using Metrics, and you're like, oh wow, this is more legitimate, and it's like little niche culture that I love is now reaching out to a broader world. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the most influential products ever, and it's still got a spot in my heart for sure.
Yeah,
so, Metrics meal replacements definitely on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, and even you preach eat like a man. On the G Code and your own.
Yeah, man, very much so, for sure.
And that was all part of it.
Like, man, but I also say eat like the man. And when I say that, right, what I mean by that is like to eat like the best version of yourself. Right? Like, what would you eat if you were just crushing it? Right? What would the man eat? What would the best version of me eat? You know what I mean? And I try to think like that. You know what I mean? So not just like the the sort of like old school like tough guy talk like your football coach would give you, right? But also the layer built into it, like, all right, like not only do I, if I'm gonna be, the phrase "no skinny champions," right? I got that from Dan Green. I tell my daughter Beans that all the time, like, because she's skinny and picky and she's a great athlete. I'm like, Beans, there's no skinny champions. You gotta eat. Finish this. I'll tell her, I'm like Beans. I'm like, you don't think Bo Jackson could finish his turkey sandwich? But that same concept, right, is like not just eat like a man, but eat like the man, right? Eat like the best version of yourself. All right, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, but I'm saying like that was that old school mentality that we had in high school and college, where it's like you eat as much as you can and you lift and you get big and you don't give two shits about having abs. You just want to get big and strong. And like there was a period there, and even maybe nowadays, where everyone's trying to get an 8-pack and just eat like a fucking rabbit instead of.
Oh, that's it, man.
Trying to build muscle.
And that's it. And I, man, I was that skinny kid. I was a ball player growing up. Like I was, I was just a skinny kid my whole life. And like, I remember going through that period and like, you know, I was still playing ball and I started lifting and I started to incorporate supplements and my appetite just exploded. And I was, like I said, eating everything that my mom would make and like, you know, was so thrilled to gain 2 pounds and 3 pounds and 5 pounds over the course of whatever amount of time. And then like almost like how free you felt and how like joyous the process was back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even when like I gained more and more knowledge and I was like in my early 20s, right? Mid 20s. And I was like, all right, so this process basically just looks like I gotta bust my ass in the gym on the most consistent basis, never miss workouts, and eat as much good nutritious food as I possibly can. Like, and that's it. Like, and there was so much like fun in that process. And you feel like things are so like bogged down by analytics and over analyzation and overthinking at this point, right? And it's like, you know, you're gonna be, you know, you're gonna turn yourself into a tank, but somehow you're still gonna have an 8-pack at the same time, and you're gonna chase like this Frank Zane aesthetic.
Yeah.
2024, you can do both of those things at once, and it's just like that's not necessarily plausible. And I feel like those kids are misguided in a certain way, you know?
Yeah, you see it with a lot of the influencers. Even just their training programs. It's like, why the fuck are you doing these movements and showing kids doing these movements? They're going to get injured, A. B, like bodybuilding and powerlifting is one of the most basic things you can do. Like you just need to go back to the basics and lift heavy, you know, push yourself almost to failure and then recover and eat well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I feel like, you know, and not to be that dude, not to draw this line in the sand, but you know, like something that I see that I observe right along the lines of what you're saying, right? Is like when I hear about men with glute training, right? And I think to myself, like, right, I think, and I, you know, like, and maybe it's me being closed-minded, but I sit here and I think to myself, like, this is as deep as I think about it. I'm like, did Arnold train glutes? Did Ronnie train glutes? Did Dorian train glutes? Did Jay Cutler? No, they just trained their ass off and did squats and train their legs, and you know what I mean? And they all had fully developed lower bodies. Why would some dude be doing all these like glute specific exercises? Is he squatting? Is he deadlifting? Well, then what the hell is he doing? You know?
Right.
And like that's one of those layers of like modern training that doesn't make sense to me either. Things are so specialized and specific, you know. You'll hear about it, you know, people worried about the minutia when they'd be so much better off thinking in a much more macro way, you know?
Yeah.
See it all the time. I see it all the time, and I hate it.
My theory is they overcomplicate it because they're trying to sell you shit.
That's a part
training
of it,
program,
sure.
or this crazy supplement or this diet plan. It's all sales.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked as a trainer, right? So you've seen it on that side of it, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
You know, I remember working as a trainer back in the day, and I would train, you know, 60-year-old men and housewives and high school kids the same way I trained.
Yeah.
Just with different rep ranges and you know, lighter weights and stuff like that. But they were doing all the exercises I was doing, right? And I would see some of the trainers that I worked with who were like really crushing it, like really monetizing what they were doing. And you know, you know, obviously I'm being this is hyperbole, but you know, they had people doing headstands on Bosu balls, you know, and with you know, like holding a dumbbell between their feet, you know, and I have like this lady doing lunges up the steps, dumbbell lunges up the steps and supersetted with squats and stuff like that, you know, and then she looks over and sees, you know, somebody doing some kind of really, you know, sort of obscure, you know, dangerous, unique looking, complicated exercise, and they probably think to themselves, why aren't I doing that? Why doesn't Greg make me do those exercises? You know, and it's like, it's because that was part of the marketing, that they were reinventing weightlifting, and here's what it looks like, and you're gonna be privy to that, and because of that, you're gonna make all these, you know, all this tremendous progress.
Yeah,
it's all marketing.
Yeah, I mean that trainer is going to get her ripped in 2 weeks, right?
Well, that's it. That's what they're selling, and it's because of this specific exercise that I just invented. You know? So, you know, the stuff that worked 100 years ago, no, that still, you know, that doesn't work anymore. This is a new era that I just invented. You should do these exercises
on this $1,000 piece of equipment.
Yep, very much so.
All right, let's go into my second. Jack 3D.
Okay,
that was like The original, the
Yeah.
OG, original formula. That was
Okay.
my ultimate orange.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm sure you've taken that one.
Sure. Of
Probably.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
That I mean, I don't believe any part of it was healthy, but
Right.
you sure felt good after you took it.
Sure.
I think it was DMAA was the
Yeah.
active ingredient, and
Yep.
there had to have been more in there. Something because I mean, the guys went to jail who invented it.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
but that was one of those products like you would take it and you'd immediately want to go to the gym. And when you got to the gym, for me at least, the harder I worked, the better I felt. And it
Yeah.
was
That's
almost like you were
incredible.
almost high during the
Yeah.
workout, and you
Sure.
got higher and higher as you pushed yourself, and you
Yeah.
never wanted to leave.
Right.
And then you'd leave and you'd be sitting at home, and then you'd have the crash
Right.
because you're stimmed out of your mind.
Well,
Uh,
it's like a special mixture, right, of endorphins with, and let's be honest, and I talk about this all the time. Anybody who follows G Code knows, right? But it's essentially like amphetamine analogs,
yes.
right? Or what some of these ingredients are, right? DMAA, DMHA, right? And then they play games with molecular structure, and something is, here's this banned ingredient, and here's this thing that's chemically altered
Uh-huh.
1%. So it's not that thing anymore that's banned, and now, but it's this now, right? And it's like the only thing that, because I definitely don't play like the holier than thou game by
Mhm.
any means, right? But the thing that I see that's an issue with those products, or people trying to still play that game now, is the fact that it's not sustainable, right? And
Right.
like it was something that I love, because like I was the type who tried it. Like I had like I don't know if I ever had my own tub of Jack 3D, right? I had
Uh-huh.
like my buddy here try a scoop, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't have the experience of like utilizing it every day for months at a time, right? But my impression of it was that you would build a tolerance.
Mhm.
Was that true? Like
Yeah.
that you need to take more to get the feeling that you're talking about, like in month 2, to get that feeling that you had initially. Now you need to take twice as much. Is that true? That was the impression I had of that product, but just products like it.
Mhm. I think that's true of amphetamines. That's what
I
happens
mean,
with
that's
these
what I'm
things.
saying. That
Yeah.
it's not a coincidence, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I would cycle off it. I'd take a tub and then the next month go to a different pre-workout.
Right.
But yeah, definitely that's what was happening.
You were chasing the dragon.
Exactly. Yep. And you didn't have a tub because you were smarter than I was.
No. I was not smarter. You know what? I was working at Animal at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I had access to the pre-workouts that we were making, in real time. And that's what I utilized. And
Mhm.
I liked those. But, even while we were there, like we were inspired by the movement of pre-workouts and what people were doing. We came out with a product called Rage initially,
Yep.
right? And Rage was supposed to be like the hardest clean pre-workout you could make, right? That was kind of like us going into it. How can we make something that can like go scoop for scoop with Jack without the amphetamine analogs, right?
Yeah.
So like we made this product initially, didn't taste very good, right? So like, but like the initial thought was that we would make it like the thought was that you would make it like a shot, right?
Mhm.
And I would joke around. I'd say, "Hey man, this is whiskey. This isn't a wine cooler, right?" Then you make it like a shot, you drink it, and that alone would be experiential, right? Just like drinking a shot of whatever, right? Of Black House is like intense, right? It's the same idea, right? Like, all right, here's you're just going to drink it down in a shot. It's not going to taste great, but you're going to feel awesome on it, right? And that was sort of like the competitive response to trying to play ball with products like Jack. But if you're not going to go the full Monty. You're not going to make that product that contains those ingredients in it. But
Yeah.
but the thing about those ingredients, other than the crash, is that it was undeniable how good you felt when you tried them. And it makes sense why now in retrospect. But
Yeah.
they were awesome, and they were. I mean, they're still that specific product and those ingredients are still hyper influential. I think to this day. Everybody's trying to recreate that phenomenon.
Yeah, and I mean the FDA's cracked down on it so much that I don't think it'll ever come back.
Right.
But
people will
are
try.
trying. Yeah.
People will try for sure.
I remember taking Rage, and you're right. It tastes awful, but it really freaking worked.
It really worked. Yeah, it hit like a ton of bricks. Like you felt it, and then you trained hard, and the results were great on it. But it just and you didn't crash, or not, or at least not as dramatically as you would crash on the DMAA kind of products. But yeah, we were proud of that product, even though like it didn't taste like Kool-Aid,
Yeah,
like,
and there were a lot of products out there that really, really worked and didn't taste good. And I had a
yeah,
thought that the worse the product tastes, the better it probably was, because you were spending money on the actual ingredients and not the flavoring system, or you had such good ingredients in there, and a lot of these don't taste good on their own that you
right.
just couldn't mask the flavor of them.
Right. No, very true, man. Very true. And it's like that's one of the things, right? Like if you've been in the game long enough, right? My dad would joke around and say, "Oh man, you." He even said to me, "He's like, you'd eat the ass off a rhinoceros if you thought it getting big, right?" Like I didn't care what it tasted like, whatever, right? And I know that there's guys who are 10 years my senior who are even more hardcore than that, right? But what you realize is that like lived through an era where the stuff didn't necessarily always taste great, but the
Mhm.
results were worth it. And if you were
Yeah,
wired a certain way, you're like, I don't care what this tastes like. I just
yeah.
want the results I want. And this, it sounds silly, and this is gonna correlate with my third Rushmore. But it was the perception in your head, like, oh, this doesn't taste good, but I'm still willing to do it because that's how
Uh-huh.
dedicated I am. That's how
Right.
hardcore I am. It's that serious to me, and I'm that serious, right? So it was like an extension of your mindset and your approach. But you and I were able to live through that era and develop that philosophy. Whereas I said, like now, like G Code's been around since 2017, and I think about formulating products and flavoring products in this current landscape, and it's like people want the product to be ultra effective, and they also want it to taste like Snapple.
Yeah.
It's like how are you going to do both at the same time? And that's what the expectations are. It's like and we try to hold ourselves to that standard, but that's the standard.
Mhm.
And that's a lofty standard. So like a lot of the modern kids getting into the sport, or just people whatever age they are, but just finding their way into using supplements on a regular basis, their bar is set that high where the
Mhm.
products that they like taste like Hawaiian Punch while also being effective. And
Right.
anything that doesn't taste as good as they're expecting is not going to last long.
Yeah.
That's where the bar is now. And I
And
think
not
it's
o
probably related to food science too, right? Like people studying flavoring like on a really like in-depth level that was just like sort of a it was like it just wasn't a point of emphasis back in the day, right? It was like, all right, let's make this really effective formula, and then oh yeah, we'll just make it vanilla or chocolate or fruit punch and whatever that tastes like. Who cares?
Mhm.
Whereas now, like the flavoring is at least as important as what the formula is.
Yeah, and they're working with Hawaiian Punch to make the flavor, and now there's a Hawaiian Punch logo on the pre-workout.
Yeah, man, I know it's crazy when you see
That's
that. It's like
expensive.
wow, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like the mainstream licensing, and you see some of these brands. It's historic. They're really setting the bar high with
Mhm.
those collaborations for sure.
But now I'd have to imagine, like, I mean, unless you're a big brand, you can't afford to do the collab unless you're giving a kickback to the owner of the flavoring system, which takes away your profit.
Yeah, man. I dipped my toe in trying to understand what that licensing looks like, and what kind of relationships you need to have, and like it's something that I'm interested in exploring. Maybe with like obviously you're not going to be doing it with Coca Cola,
Right.
like but if you can find other products out there that you think taste awesome that are maybe like a little lower profile, um, where like there maybe is a mutual benefit to both companies involved, simply because you're now licensing something that people might recognize and think looks awesome, and now you're putting it on your product. But then maybe you're exposing a company with a little bit of a lower profile to a new audience. So like
Mhm.
if ever G Code is able to pull something like that off, which would be cool, like it would probably be a situation like that where like
Right.
you know where somebody hadn't yet approached these specific brands about licensing their flavors, and as such, maybe they see some benefit and like, oh, all right, like we can maybe gain a following or some traction in sports nutrition, and they don't need a royalty check up front for six
Right.
figures or something like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's definitely worth exploring. But yeah, sometimes, man, hey, man, I'm a consumer and I'm a flavor guy and I'm a person who loves food. I'm a snacksman as much as anybody.
Mhm.
So when I see something that's flavored like Chips Ahoy or Country Time Lemonade or whatever, I'm like, man, it's pretty dope.
Yeah.
You know? I got to tip my cap.
Yeah, they're
You know?
kicking into they're tapping into the nostalgia too.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's man, it's powerful. Nostalgia is powerful, man, in terms of marketing.
Yeah. What's your third?
All right, number three, I'm gonna go with like I said, I had a long storied history with this company, but Animal Pack.
Yeah.
The multivitamin was an awesome product that opened doors for me personally. So I have like a bunch of like just personal connections with that product. But that again was one of those products where it seemed like every serious dude used Animal Pack. Every serious dude took Animal Pack, right? And the fact that it was, a multivitamin plus. So you'd see like Centrum and one of the days like that, and they seemed so, at one point, like my earliest interactions with vitamins and stuff comes from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom was taking vitamins on a regular basis, it was in the 80s. And, she had me on a multivitamin. It was like a prescription multivitamin. And,
Uh-huh.
even Centrum and that kind of stuff and taking extra vitamin C and all those things were things that were commonplace in my house. So then when I discovered Animal Pack, which was like, oh, this is that thing that's supposed to make you more healthy, but it's for serious dudes like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's for those guys I aspire to be like, right? So there was like this emotional connection between me and that product. And then when they initially came out with the black and white ads in the magazines that we talked about, right now it was presenting this, sort of fantasy landscape of like this hardcore bodybuilder from the East Coast and all that stuff. And it spoke to me like on such a profound level. Like, and it's funny because like, those photos and whatnot, which were taken by the great Brian Moss, those photos, those locations, they also had like a layer to me that felt sort of like hip hop, right?
Okay.
Like if you remember like those, and then this is something that like was never intended, I think, on their end, but something that spoke to me before I was even, affiliated with the company was that I used to think of like a lot of the great music videos from the '90s, from the bands, the hip hop groups that I love so much, were in black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was like this gritty authenticity to that stuff, right? And like when I was first getting into film, Raging Bull, right? Robert De Niro as Jake LaMotta, that right, that visceral feeling that Raging Bull had. Blood and Guts, Dorian Yates' training video, right, was in black and white. And it was just him wearing his regular clothes and just training in a dungeon, right? And you compare that like sort of raw, intense, like brutality, fly on the wall vibe, reportage vibe, like real life stuff here. That vibe in comparison to like bodybuilding that was like fancy with guys in sunglasses and little shorts and the girls on the beach and all that, and it was such a different world. So like Animal was able to sort of bridge the gap between here's this sort of unique 11 tableted, difficult to take, obscure product that you don't necessarily feel. Like you felt Jack 3D or you felt Ultimate Orange, you don't necessarily feel it, but just the emotional process of taking that and being a guy who takes that and uses that was special. So it's a cool product and one that like, for 100 reasons, always like made a positive impact on me.
Was there a version of that product that had a fat burner in it? I'm trying to remember.
Or I think there was always like so there was Animal Cuts, which was a fat burner that was in multiple capsules and tablets.
Okay.
That sort of like you would take with Animal Pack. It was a completely different product, but it was the format, how it was presented. It was in pills and packs. They came in the same, delivery method. But the actual Animal Pack, though, if you ever read like the different complexes in it, always had like stuff for metabolism, stuff for thermogenesis. So like it was an all-in-one kind of thing. So you felt like you were checking multiple boxes when you took that one thing. Right. Multiple boxes that weren't just related to general health, like a regular multivitamin, but were related to performance and strength and your body composition and all that stuff.
I think it was GNC then. GNC, they copied Animal Pack with their own, individual packs. Yeah. And they did I think it was like multivitamin burn or something like that, or ripped. And they did the vitamins. And then there was 2 red pills in there that were the fat burning ingredients. Or I'm pretty sure it was just stimulants.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a pretty good product too. but I remember Animal Cuts. Animal Cuts was awesome.
And that was a multivitamin, and that GNC product with the stimulant in there, right? It was a multivitamin you could feel.
Yes.
You're taking this multivitamin out. Oh, I feel something from this product. I feel it, right? And like that's one of like the oldest approaches in the books, right? Is the idea that like what can you slide in there that people can feel? Like I don't know if it's still the case, but I know Gaspari came out with a multivitamin years ago that had
Anabite. Yeah.
beta-alanine in it.
Yep.
And like beta-alanine is a great ingredient, but why would you put it in a multi? Oh, you put it in a multi because you take it and you feel that tingle and you think, oh, this is working.
Yeah.
You know?
So I used to take Anabite all the time. That was my favorite multivitamin. And I gave it to my roommate back in the day.
Yep.
And he had to excuse himself from a meeting because he said he felt like ants were crawling all over his ears because he had never taken beta-alanine before.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's all it was. I mean, beta-alanine when you've never used it before is like it's a crazy intense feeling. You know what I mean? And then you think about sliding that into a multivitamin. It's like, you know, especially somebody, you know, take multivitamin on an empty stomach in the morning with black coffee and you're out the door and you're in your car and you're like, oh shit, you know, you don't have any experience with beta-alanine. I would imagine it would hit you hard, you know? Pretty cool. It's a pretty cool approach, but that's, like I said, can I make somebody feel this? You know? And that's like, that is very much the case with sliding beta-alanine in there or sliding stimulants into a multivitamin. It's like, now you feel it, you know?
Yeah. The product's not working unless you feel it, right?
Right. That's right. For sure.
Yeah. Piggybacking on that, my next supplement is Gaspari's Myofusion, the original one.
Yeah.
That prior to taking that, I had only taken, I think, the GNC whey.
Okay.
And back then, you know, the flavoring systems weren't that great. So you could, I don't know if it was the whey you tasted, but it had a definite aftertaste to the protein powder. Myofusion was the first one, the vanilla flavor, where that flavor was gone and the protein was delicious.
Right.
And I stuck with that for years. And then they changed the formula around the time that the protein spiking scandal hit.
Okay.
And I have to imagine something involved in the flavoring system and whatever. They needed to reformulate the entire product. So it didn't taste the same.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard, man. It's hard. Like you create this perfect product and then you have to reformulate it or re-engineer it somehow. And it's like to live up to what it originally tasted like for the people who knew that original version of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard.
Yeah.
You start from scratch. Start from scratch when you've nailed it already.
Exactly.
You know?
What's your favorite tasting protein outside of G Code?
My favorite tasting protein. Let me think. My favorite tasting protein that I had. Okay. You know what I really like? I always have, but I really like it in the packets and the RTDs is the Labrada Lean Body.
Yes. Good
I
call.
feel like those have always tasted awesome, whether you're using a powder or whether you were using the RTD, you know, the 40 gram protein drink in the you know, the paper. I forget what the name of that type of milk carton.
The milk box.
Yeah. I think those are great. The lean body powder, like there was a chocolate that was just delicious. So that was one that I really liked. We were talking about Metrics before, and I said about Myoplex. Myoplex had a strawberry, and strawberries, and it was incredible. And you would blend it up with a banana. It was like amazing. And like, I'm super proud of our product, our Fuel, and the strawberry shortcake because it's a really, really delicious strawberry. And I feel like strawberry protein is one of those things where there are some really good ones, but they're few and far between. And a lot of them are awful. So like, you know, I've been the guy with the 5-pound strawberry protein that tastes terrible. And I'm like, oh man, I got like 60 scoops of this I got to get through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a place in my heart for that strawberry Myoplex. But then all those lean body drinks are great. I'm trying to think of what else I really have enjoyed over the years. Those are the odd ones that jump to mind.
I got the lean body for my wife when after we had our first child.
Yeah.
She needed to get more protein in her diet. Those were the only ones she would drink.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great.
That's how good the flavoring system is.
Yeah, they're great. You know, we were talking about we're talking about like, you know, Universal and that stuff in my time there. And they had a weight gainer called Real Gains. Right. And it was like when I was like my most determined to get as big as I possibly could. Right. Like my goal, I don't know why, But at a certain point, like I was like, oh, dude, I'm gonna be, 280 and drug free, and I'm gonna be a beast. Watch, right? And like, it's an absurd thing to be like obsessed with, right? But like, they had all these weight gainers that I now had access to, and they had like one that was like cleaner than the old school ones that were like full of sugar and whatnot. And they had like multiple flavors of this Real Gains. And I remember making it like in the morning, making it before bed, and like blending them up. And they tasted awesome. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna make 1,000 calories, but it's gonna be concentrated into like 12 ounces, in the Magic Bullet, and I'll bang back a couple of those every day, and I can't lose. But that's like another thing too that is like old school, and I don't know how many young guys like go through that phase anymore, which is like the weight gainer phase, but I feel like they're missing out.
Mm-hmm.
They're missing out. Those can be highly effective if done right,
Yeah. You don't really see big kids at the high school anymore like you used to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably like you're saying, because a lot of that influencer information that's out there and social media, right? And social media is an interesting thing too, right? Because social media, you always, and I'm obviously speaking about myself as well, right? Like, no better than anybody, right? But I'm sure you're exactly the same, because we're human beings, right? Like, you never want to post a picture of yourself looking bad,
right?
Right? You always want to look good. You always want to look your best, right? And like, if kids' perception now of themselves is that they only look their best when they're ripped or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't really build in any time for you to grow, or
right.
to get bigger, to gain 20 pounds in a year. It doesn't really build that in if you're always concerned about, like you said, having an 8-pack, right? It's like, if you're trying to present that specific look from the time you're 15 years old, then what chance do you have to, like, I used to use the metaphor of like building the big block of granite that you're going to chisel out the statue from, right?
Mm-hmm.
What opportunity do you have to build the big block of granite if you're always, so concerned about having like your jawline defined and stuff,
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not easy. It's not easy. The kids, and and I don't blame them all. It's not really their fault. It's more like societal conditions,
mm-hmm.
That are like you robbing kids of that opportunity. It's a shame.
Yeah. What are we on? 4? What's your?
Yeah, we're on 4. I'm trying to think of what my 4th is. So so I had Ultimate Orange, Metrics, and Animal Pack were my top 3, right? Yep. All right. So then my 4th. All right, my 4th. I'm gonna throw this out there, but it's gonna be like it's gonna be a company, and then there's multiple products within that company.
Okay.
If I can do that, if I can just put this up there, because I feel like they made so many awesome products. It was American Bodybuilding's RTD drinks, ABB.
Yeah, ABB. Okay.
Okay, which had Rip Force and Speed Stack, which also like deserve some love when we're talking about the original pre-workouts, because they were not energy drinks, right? Mm-hmm. They were like performance products that had stimulants in them, right? That you would go and you would buy out of the cooler at the gym, right? But they all tasted incredible, right? Speed Stack, Rip Force. There was they had a carb drink that was 100 grams of carbs. They tasted amazing, and they were called Carbo Force.
Mm-hmm.
And American Bodybuilding apparently isn't in business anymore, which is an absolute shame. Like, somebody needs to resurrect that brand, right? But their cooler drinks, I thought, tasted amazing and were super effective. And they had a drink called Carbo Force, and the Carbo Force was like 100 grams of carbs in one shot. And I swear to God, man, even when America became carb phobic and there was the Atkins diet, even before keto and all that, right? Every big serious dude I ever knew loved Carbo Force. Loved them. Drank them, like swore by them. And it was a product that got discontinued while ABB was still around. I was like, man, like, there's nowhere you can go get a carb drink now. But those were awesome. They had a product called Blue Thunder, right? And Blue Thunder was like it was supposed to be like an anabolic activator. So it was like this product that mixed like performance ingredients with protein, with some stimulants as well, right? So you would drink it like at some point around your workout, maybe pre-workout, maybe intra-workout or whatever, maybe even post-workout. Like, but we didn't know what we were doing. You just took this stuff whenever you took it, right? And that stuff, it was funky tasting, but to this day, there's like a special place in my heart for it, right? And like it's funny, like you think about like sense memory, right? And like I can remember it was like when I first got a gym membership to the gym, my mom bought me my first 6-week gym membership, right? And I remember walking to the gym and like in terms of sense memory, right? I lived in Brigantine outside of Atlantic City, right? I was at the Jersey Shore. So I can almost remember like what that drink tasted like, right? The music that I was listening to, right? Which was like Onyx and House of Pain, right? Listening to that music, what that drink tasted like, smelling the salt air, right? Because I was at the shore, right? Like walking to the gym, like and like the insane nostalgia of that, and like the power that you felt as like a 15-year-old kid, you know what I mean? And it'll forever be linked to those products. So yeah, you know, I don't know if it's gonna be me who does it, but somebody needs to bring back American bodybuilding because those drinks were incredible. And like in an era now where like the canned energy drink is more and more and more popular as ever. I saw you taking a sip of
Liquid Death. Liquid Death. It's not an energy drink.
Those taste amazing.
Yeah.
In an era where those are so popular, you feel like there could be a renaissance for that kind of stuff, you know, for like a full broad line of multiple different products, you know.
Yeah.
And I think they did it better than anybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been inside an actual gym in a while because I would train in my basement, but I don't even know what would be in the cooler at a gym.
It would be those
always the ABB.
It would be the canned energy drinks and then some protein shakes and water.
Okay.
And that's it. It's like pretty much 2 categories now. And then like I see more and more stuff coming out like in the hydration space, right? Where there's like superior or you know what position themselves to be like superior alternatives to Gatorade or Powerade. So you basically go and your choice would be like a canned energy drink, like a, you know, the Ghost ones, a Bang, Rain, those products, right? It would be Gatorade, Powerade, and products adjacent to that, maybe like the Prime energy drinks, whatever, and then water, and then like protein shakes. But there aren't even as many of those anymore, right? It's like the Lean Body RTD. Trying to think of what other ones are popular, but you know, there just aren't as many options in that space anymore. There's like 850 different canned energy drinks, and then everything else is just sort of like, you know, a little single product here or there.
Yeah, and the problem with the canned stuff is it's all carbonated. So
it
is.
I
don't know, that screws your stomach up during training.
Well, you know what the thing about those two is that like I like energy drinks. Like I like those canned energy drinks, but like to me, like when I talk about them, I think like there's a time and a place for those, but they are really, if we're honest with ourselves, right? They're really nothing more than a diet soda with more caffeine in it.
Right.
Right. So here's all the boxes it checks, right? It tastes awesome. It's cold. It's fizzy, right? And it doesn't have sugar or extra carbs in it or anything like that. So it's like just a pleasurable thing, right? And like if you're not in the mood for coffee or you don't want coffee or you prefer cold drinks, you know, it's this cold, fizzy, bubbly thing that tastes like Sour Patch Kids. Like, who doesn't like that, right? And it's got 250 milligrams caffeine, 300 milligrams caffeine, so it's got a kick to it. Like, those are awesome, but they aren't performance products, right? It's like I said, it's a jacked up diet soda, and that's fine. That's what it is. But it's not a pre-workout.
No.
And you see a lot of people utilizing them as an alternative to pre-workouts, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's like should be what it is. I don't think they're an alternative to pre-workout. I think they're an alternative to coffee, in my opinion. Or, you know, that's more what they are. They're an alternative to black coffee, as I see them. And essentially just like a tasty beverage, a tasty 0-calorie beverage that's got more caffeine.
You know? Yeah, and that's I look at it more for productivity. Like 2 o'clock, you're starting to crash a little bit.
For sure.
Need to get more work done. That's when I crack an energy drink.
For sure, man. You know, I've been doing my morning cardio. I've been walking. I mean, I always do my morning cardio, but I've been doing like outdoor walks of late. But like the first thing I drink is a scoop of Vice Triple X. The thing about that is that it's got 420 milligrams caffeine, which is a lot. Now I don't chug it. I take a little bit of it. I go do my walk. I come back. I drink a little bit more. Then I'll train. But the thing about that is that it's a lot in one shot, and then I'm gonna need something midday, right? Yeah. You know, and it's like, am I gonna do another 420 milligrams, or do I want something that's a little bit less, right? So is it like gonna be OG Vice, or is it gonna be a cup of coffee? And like those are the spots, like you're saying, in terms of productivity, those midday like crashes that you're trying to avoid, where you get sluggish, which I think everybody deals with, especially if you get up early, especially if you're very active, especially if you have kids and all that, right? especially if you don't sleep as much as you need to, or you want
Mm-hmm.
to, or you wish you could, like both of us. You're going to need that in the middle of the day. And I feel like those energy drinks are perfect for that. That's like the ideal scenario, the ideal usage.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll
So you're
jump in.
number 4.
Yeah, what's my number 4? So I'm kind of biased because I worked with these guys at Muscle and Fitness, but I think it's Jim Stepani's pre-workout.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because I know he wasn't the first one to do it, because I think NutraBio and Mark Glazer had done it previously, but it was the first that I had seen fully dosed pre-workout, or at least listed every ingredient,
Sure,
how much was in the product,
Yeah.
all had science backing up the effectiveness of them.
Sure.
And plus, it tasted pretty good. So I was the type of guy who would buy a pre-workout, then I'd buy, raw citrulline or raw arginine or creatine, mix it all together and take it. This was the first product that I felt had everything in one.
All in one. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's like, I think that's an important thing, right? Like, it's baked into our brand in terms of our approach with what we make, where everything's transparent, where what you're getting on the label, what's in the bottle is on the label. And, for a long time, there was, the pixie dusting of proprietary blends that happened often. So, yeah, I think it speaks to, now, part of it's marketing, but then I think the other part of it is like, it speaks to the integrity of the brand and like an honest dialogue with your consumer, right? And it's like, if you want to be known for sort of having some integrity and being transparent, then putting those ingredients, dealing with the expense of making a properly dosed pre-workout, right? Like buying into that, like, because there's, these are all for-profit companies that are trying to maximize their margins. So that if you're putting 6 grams of citrulline and 3.2 grams of beta-alanine and whatnot into your pre-workout, that comes at a cost. So there's a certain amount of integrity and adherence to quality over simple profits that's built into that, if you're going to take that, approach. And then also, like I said, it sets you up for the perception of honesty and that, you're going to formulate products that are effective and that your consumers can put their faith in you, executing this product and being honest and upfront with them. So whether it be Jim Stepani or NutraBio or any of these other brands, like I tip my cap to anybody who's doing that, because they're successful enough and known enough that they could hide behind a proprietary blend too, and they choose not to.
Yeah, and I think he came in shortly after the Jack scandal and companies slipping amphetamines into their products.
Sure.
So it was right place, right time for him. And also,
right. How do you establish trust, right?
Yeah, all of these guys who did the transparent labels, I think, pushed the industry in the correct direction.
Yeah, agreed, for sure.
You got time for one more topic?
Man, I got time for anything, brother. I got time for anything. For you, man, I got time for anything.
Thanks, man.
I love this. This is awesome.
They're trying to run a business.
Yo, man, it's all good, bro. This is all part of it, man. This is all part of it.
Yeah, marketing.
Yeah.
All right, so you've seen that New York just passed a law banning the sale of dietary supplements to people under the age of 18. I think the law is A5610D. It excludes, I believe, protein powder and protein RTDs unless those products contain a dietary supplement, like you put creatine in it.
Right.
Now you as a sports nutrition business owner, do you get a letter from the government in New York saying you cannot put these ingredients in, or you cannot sell these products to minors anymore?
Nobody ever reached out to us in that regard. So, how widespread their campaign was to make supplement companies aware of it, I can't say for sure. I'm conflicted by that, right? Because I was the 15-year-old kid drinking Ultimate Orange, right? And there's a certain magical nostalgia that's related to that sort of period of self-discovery, and how the supplements, I always talk about, this is like me giving you a philosophical answer about this, right? But one of the things I love about supplements, right, is that they're like process related, right? And it's like, when I was a kid, I fell in love with the concept that my dad sort of imparted upon me, which was like of self-actualization,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, what are the things that I can do every day to build myself into the person that I want to be, right? The best version of myself. What can I do, right? And I always saw supplements as like a tool, right? There are all these little tools. We at G-Code, we say tools to empower, right? But I always saw the supplements as these little tools, these little things that I can add to my arsenal that improves my process on this road to self-actualization, right? And they always had tremendous value to me. And I feel like having no access to that stuff, in my teenage years, in those formative years, would have sucked and would have
Yeah.
undermined my process, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, right, like a 15-year-old kid shouldn't have been using that jacked that you
Right,
felt
right.
so strongly about, right? And I would never want that, right? And I certainly wouldn't want my daughters using that, right?
Mhm.
So, there's a trade-off. I feel like there probably needs to be like a more informed process. There needs to be more nuance there,
Mhm. Yes.
right? Where it seems a little too cut and dry where we're just talking about like a protein macronutrient product and everything else,
Mhm.
right? Like I don't feel like it's an and everything else kind of thing. Like I feel like an amino acid product would be completely fine and
Mhm.
innocuous for a young person. And that's me saying this as somebody who, we consciously don't promote our products to minors,
Mhm.
simply because of stuff like this, and because I don't think a 15-year-old needs Vice Triple X either. You know what I
Right.
mean? But at the same time, like if you're talking about an amino product, a creatine product, a greens product, a multivitamin, a protein powder, something like Cell Tech, right? Like I feel like those are generally and genuinely harmless for a healthy young person. So like there needs to be some nuance to that, and as often
Yeah.
happens, some of these laws are so black and white and cut and dry, addressing topics that are very gray area and nuanced.
Mhm. Yeah,
What do you
and I think the industry has cleaned itself up. I mean, there's no
sure?
I mean, I'm sure there are guys selling on the black market
Of
offender
course,
products and DMA products, but they're not doing it legally. I mean,
right? Sure,
it's not a
and
dietary ingredient.
you look at the SARMs, right?
So, yeah.
SARMs and peptides and all these products that are, the proliferation of those are widespread and you
Mhm.
see those everywhere. And I guarantee you there's teenagers taking that stuff.
Yeah,
For a fact there are,
yeah,
and there shouldn't be.
right.
And they shouldn't have access to those, so like they should probably spend, here's the thing, they should spend more of their energy just ensuring that younger people aren't taking those dangerous products, right?
Mhm.
Extreme stimulant products, amphetamine analog products, hormonal products. Like the kids shouldn't be. And that's not me saying that an adult, a healthy, autonomous being shouldn't have access to that stuff. I think they should. I think a lot of the products over the years that got banned, whether it was ephedrine, which we talked about before, or the first generation pro hormones and that stuff should still be around today. And consenting adults should have access to that stuff.
Mhm.
It's where you run into problems when it's kids taking them. So
Yeah.
like if that law could be a little bit more nuanced to really protect kids from stuff that's dangerous, as opposed to, like I said, undermining their process and the thought that a young linebacker who's 16 can't go and buy some Cell Tech
Mhm.
like that. I don't, or a similar product or a weight gainer or a multivitamin or some aminos. Like I think that's a shame.
Yeah. Creatine was specifically mentioned as one of the ingredients they can't buy. It's like, where is there science that if you're younger, you're not supposed to take creatine? Because I remember in the 90s, they thought it was a steroid, or the media was pitching
Right,
it
of
that way.
course, right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, and you just talk about ignorance and lack of access to information and people being just jumping to conclusions, right, and trying to create scandal out of nothing. Like
Yeah.
that's the definition of that, and it's like, I mean, is there anything? Is there anything outside of the macronutrients of protein, carbohydrates, and fat? Is there anything on this planet that people ingest in supplemental form that is more researched than creatine at this point?
No.
Like, and proven over and over again to be effective and safe.
Mhm.
Like it is double-blind, placebo, university studied to death, and proven over and over again to be effective and to be only of benefit to healthy people. And like the thought that you're going to classify that in the same way you would classify these literally dangerous ingredients, to me is just it's
cigarettes.
It undermines everything, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the law changed. You have to be 18 to buy cigarettes, right? So creatine.
Yeah, it's 18 or 21. I mean, it's 21 to buy booze, right? It might be 18 to buy cigarettes.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So we're going to classify creatine and cigarettes the same way. It's like, or you talk about how smoking is down, but vapes and all that kind of stuff, and it's like kids still access that stuff all the time. And at 18, I mean, it's one of those things too. I know you're like at 18, you're like legally an adult and you can like go die for your country, right? But at the same time, it's like you're still a kid at 18.
I'm still not an adult, man. I don't.
Okay.
I haven't grown up yet.
You ain't lying, right? So you think about 18. At 18, you're still a baby. You know what I mean? And you have access to a lot of stuff that could be really, have negative impacts on your health. Legal, and it's legal. But if you're 17 and you go buy some creatine, seems crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and also there's a childhood obesity epidemic in this country. So. You're going to penalize the 16-year-old dude who wants to lift weights and play sports and take creatine.
Of course, right? Exactly. Right? You're undermining, right? You're undermining somebody's personal process that is going to potentially lead them down a road to better health, maybe for the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to undermine it early. But it's okay, but it's okay for that kid to go and buy fast food 5 meals a day if he wanted to, or if his parents didn't care and just fed him it, or, whatever, could eat junk food, around the clock. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he can't have some BCAAs.
Yeah. Creatine or raspberry ketones. Like, come on.
Yeah.
The others, like, they're worried about the kids taking SARMs, right? I mean, or the amphetamines in the products, but those are illegal to begin with. Nobody should be taking those, right? Not even adults. So you're trying to protect kids from taking illegal products that are already illegal to people over 18.
Right.
What are you really doing?
Exactly. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I said, and I mean, I think this is the case with a lot of laws, right? But there's a lot of gray area that needs to be addressed. And when things are so black and white, cut and dry, it just overlooks all the nuance, and ultimately a lot of the time it does more damage than it does good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the legislators said the supplement industry is the wild West, and that's, I could say, maybe back in the early 2000s.
I was going to say it was. It's not anymore.
No.
No. I mean, with GMPs, with greater scrutiny from the FDA, with greater media scrutiny, with much more access to information, immediate access to information. It is certainly not the Wild West like it once was.
Yeah.
And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It can't, by its very nature, it can't afford to be the Wild West anymore.
Right. And it's a lot of big players now. It's not so much the smaller guys. It's the Glambias and Muscle Techs and all these guys are running the game. They're not going to spike their products. They can't afford to.
No, and I mean, these contract manufacturers, who are making this stuff, they can't risk, multi-million-dollar business on the strength of like spiking products with illicit ingredients and then getting shut down. That's not plausible. And like, we used to joke around and say, like, back in the day, like one of the business models was like, sell them as much of this gray market shit as you possibly can, make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can, and then save the rest of the money for the lawyers, right? And it's like, that's one approach, but it's not an approach for, longevity in this game, or to build a legacy business. And I feel like more and more people are thinking about it that way now than maybe they did 15, 20 years ago,
Yeah. And you saw, like Aaron Singerman and PJ Braun just went to jail for doing that. I think, government's made itself clear that you'll be punished if you play in that gray market game.
For sure. No, absolutely. And then these guys are forced in many instances to sort of reinvent themselves and their brands and all that sort of stuff, in a landscape that's expecting them to be the gunslingers of the Wild West, right? And they can't be that anymore if they don't want to deal with the legal ramifications of it. So it's not easy. There's a lot of cautionary tales out there. You know? And I guess I would assume that Wild West approach now is for some of that's still being embraced. I would assume it's for some of these like sort of off-market underground pre-workouts that are going to try to wow you. You know, like we would joke around, but you find yourself in some of these stores and it's like they're trying to present this image of hardcore like in such an extreme way where it's like the bottles are literally like blood and skulls and you know, like we would joke around saying like a pre-workout called Demon Spawn or whatever, right? Because it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, okay, how do I make this more hardcore than the last thing? Like I'm sure there's products like that are still really pushing the envelope. And like you'll even see when you walk into a supplement store and you pick up a product and you'll see how it's labeled, right? Mm-hmm. And how they are not like building a supplement facts panel the way you're supposed to. They're not, you know, doing the math. The math isn't mathing, right? On these labels, right?
They're misspelling stuff.
You know, like this is not, you know, a professional outfit in a professional outfit in that way in terms of the regulatory aspects of what you're supposed to be doing in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And then if anybody else is playing those games, like it's what we referred to before, right? It's the SARMs, it's the peptides. Mm-hmm. Those are like the more quick money avenues, I think, in terms of how you can sort of push the envelope and try to stay underneath the radar for as long as you possibly can. And you know, one of the things that I hear more and more from supplement company owners is like those SARM products those are the products with the big margins, right? Because the laws to make them are relatively inexpensive and they sell them really expensive. They sell them at a high price tag because they're effective, you know, and it's like, you know, what those essentially are, you know, different kinds of oral steroids, you know, just packaged and called something else essentially. And it's like, you know, that's a game that I eventually, you know, you feel like, and I don't want it to catch up to people. Like, you know, as long as, like I said, there's not kids using it or whatever, I want everybody to be able to use whatever product they feel, you know, suits their process. But at the same time, you know, that's not an awesome game to be playing in terms of, like I said, trying to have longevity or a brand that lasts, you know?
Yeah. They're going to tank their testosterone and fuck up their livers.
Oh,
don't even know it. They think it's because it's being sold to them that it's healthy.
Right, for sure. And they don't know any better, right? And it's like, you know, you use that kind of product and like you're saying, right, you're in your formative years and you suppress your natural hormone output for a long period of time, and then, you know, you're on testosterone replacement at 21.
Yep.
You know, what a sin that would be, you know? So I hate to see that kind of stuff happen. And that's where it becomes dangerous. That's where it becomes irresponsible. And that's where I think more of these energies are better spent. You know?
Yeah. Let's do one more topic if you got time.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Ozempic.
Oh man. Ozempic.
Ozempic.
Man.
Yeah. Dude, I heard.
You're gonna say Ozempic? You want me to react to that?
Well, I it's funny because I heard a couple weeks ago one of the moms at my daughter's gymnastics class say, "Oh, I just tried this new drug my doctor prescribed called Ozempic." She's like, "I'm not hungry at all anymore, and I'm losing weight like crazy." I'm like, dude, like my thing with this is, if you take something like Ozempic or any other of these prescribed diet solutions, you have to change your lifestyle,
of course,
or else they're not going to work once you come off them. You're going to gain all of the weight back. And the flip side is, if you change your diet and you get into fitness and you're active, the weight's going to come off. So you didn't need the product in the first place.
Absolutely. No, there's no doubt. It's entirely about lifestyle. That weight, you know, and it's funny too, right? Because like people just say, I want to lose weight, right? It's like, no, you want to lose body fat and you want to maintain or gain muscle, right? Like that's what's going to change your body. I always joke around and I say you can keto yourself down to just a smaller version of the same bag of shit, right? But what you really want to do is change your body composition, right? And it's like, it's like these products like Ozempic, or you know, it's not even unlike you know, the weight, what's it called, the waistband surgery, the surgery where you know they're like, it's like an invasive surgery where you're reducing the size of the stomach, and you know, people lose all this weight doing that. But it's like, if they're not, like you're saying, modifying their lifestyle with proper nutrition and with exercise on a regular basis, then what they're setting themselves up for is sort of like this yo-yo scenario, right?
Yeah.
Where you're going to take this product, you're going to drop all this weight, you're going to lose. I mean, I know people lose muscle mass on Ozempic, and you're going to lose all of this body weight, and then you're going to come off of Ozempic at some point, and then when that happens, you're going to rebound in probably in a way that's maybe even worse than before because you haven't altered the lifestyle factors that contributed so much to you getting to that place in the first place. So it's like it's a shame, and it seems irresponsible on the part of medical professionals to be writing prescriptions for this stuff sort of loosely. You know, it started off as a diabetes medication, correct? Yeah. Started off as a diabetes medication. And, you know, like so many medications on TV, when they're advertised, you hear them talk about all the side effects, right? And the side effects often of some of these, I joke and I say, like, you know, the side effect of some of these medications, some of these pharmaceuticals are worse than the actual disease that this product is supposed to be treating, right? The side effects are even worse than the thing it's supposed to be treating. And on those early Ozempic commercials, I remember them breaking down, you know, the side effects of using Ozempic. And like one of the things they talk about is weight loss. Yeah. So like somewhere along the way, somebody must have taken it and remarked about how they're just not hungry anymore and they've lost all this weight anecdotally. And then all of a sudden it caught on, you know, like I wonder how many people are using Ozempic not under a doctor's care. Like, or like, is there a gray market for Ozempic at this point?
I think you can get it as a research peptide.
Yeah, I believe that to be. I'm not surprised, and I believe that to be the case as well. Yeah. It's crazy.
Which is that goes back to the research chemicals and peptide stuff. I don't know if you've ever visited those sites, but I mean, there's ones that have dosing instructions on there.
Yeah,
and it's like this is for research.
Right. Well, it's only for your lab rat, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a 220-pound lab rat, this is the dose I would give it.
Yeah. You know? What a wild category of things people are doing.
No, very much so. Very much so. And it's like, you know, and that was an obvious thing that it seemed to me like, okay, so will there be simply research chemicals packaged in pill form and being sold alongside the SARMs and supplement stores, and it's essentially Ozempic just called something else? Probably not even very clever, something that's Ozempic with the QE at the end, right? But it's technically different, right? But that occurred to me initially, like, will they just be doing that, or will they create something that's like I said, just slightly chemically altered from the original ingredient, now call it something else and try to market it out otherwise and say, oh, this isn't a pharmaceutical. And then it's just going to be people, you know, people taking it in. And, you know, one of the other things too, right, is like that, you know, we were talking about nuance and black and white and gray areas and stuff like that, right? Like, I understand the scenario, right? I don't lack the empathy, right? To see, you know, the big picture negative impacts on somebody's health, plus just their quality of life, right? When you're very overweight, right? And, you know, that it's a combination of 100 factors, genetics and, you know, access to proper nutrition and knowing and caring enough or being healthy enough to get into an exercise program and the cultural and lifestyle things in your family and whatnot. Like, there's a million factors that go into that, right? And into somebody finding themselves like, you know, morbidly obese and in a terrible place, you know, in terms of their physical health, because of weight. And it's like, okay, in that scenario, like, I understand wanting to have some sort of invasive surgery. I understand wanting to use some sort of pharmaceutical because you're, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures to a certain extent, right? So I get that, right? But I also saw the scenario coming where there would be women women or men who want to get in shape for summer, don't really want to, you know, I'm not so into that whole, you know, training and nutrition thing. But is there a magic pill I can take that can help me shed some weight, lose weight, right? They're going to lose weight, you know, before Memorial Day. I know that there's a market for that, man. You know, and those are the people who really shouldn't be using it. That to me is more concerning than somebody who's 200 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
Doesn't have any options at this point, you know, is the people who are just going to casually use it to get in shape. And then what happens after they dump that weight and and still haven't adjusted their lifestyle.
Mhm. I'm sure it's infiltrated the fitness industry. Like, I'm
Oh, for
sure competitors are probably messing with it and influencers are messing with it.
sure. Absolutely, absolutely, and and that's it's funny too, right? It's like I I've never I never saw it. Like, obviously, I think we all yo-yo. Anybody who's been serious in lifting, we all yo-yo between wanting to be in better condition or wanting to be bigger and stronger,
Hmm.
right? So you vacillate back and forth between those 2 points, right? Like, oh, I want to get in better shape. Oh man, I feel skinny. I want to get bigger and stronger. Right? And you go
Yep.
back and forth between those two, right? It's always
Yeah.
me, right? It's one or the other,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh,
100%.
right, exactly. And so of course people are going to try to look for whatever tools they have that they can utilize to sort of address that back and forth feeling. But the funny thing about it is, like, in terms of supplements, and I don't know about you, but I have never ever once been into things that inhibit or curb my appetite. Like, I've always been the type who's made a link between my appetite being strong and robust and being in a state of good health,
Hmm.
whether that's emotional or physical, right? Like, am I in a good state of mind? If I'm in a good state of mind, then I'm hungry,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
If I'm physically active and I'm crushing it, I'm hungry, right?
Hmm.
I'm creating a need for more food. I want to eat. I correlate eating with pleasure and happiness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm in a bad state, if I'm stressed, if I'm depressed, if I'm upset, or if I'm not pushing myself physically enough, right? Or some combination thereof, and my appetite is reduced, that's not a good place to be.
Hmm.
So I think about these people who need to alter their lifestyles in such a profound way, now having no desire to eat food. And I think, man, that's not a good place to be in either. You know,
No. That's what happens when you're sick, right?
That's it, man. Exactly, exactly. Right. You're sick. You're right. These horrible muscle wasting diseases and stuff like that. Nobody has any appetite. I don't hear about cancer patients needing access to cannabis and that sort of stuff so that they have any appetite at all because of the chemicals and the radiation and that sort of stuff. And it's like, I've always correlated being in a good place mentally and physically with having a robust appetite. So then when I hear about either over the counter supplements or pharmaceuticals that destroy somebody's appetite and make them not want to eat, and then as such they're essentially starving themselves into a low, to a lesser body weight, I think to myself, that's not good. That's not a healthy place to
No.
be in,
No.
you know.
No.
Sure.
All right. You want to wrap it?
I mean, that's your call, my brother.
Save some topics for next
Yeah,
time.
absolutely, for episode 2, for
For
sure.
episode 2, yeah, we did about an hour 15.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was a pleasure, man. It went by in the blink of an eye, man. I could do this all day.
Yeah, man.
Awesome
Likewise.
stuff, bro.
Awesome. So next Friday, right? We'll do it again.
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, bro.